Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffe Kennedy, author of Epic Fantasy Romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Today is Monday, October 28th. This will be the last podcast of October, for better or worse. If you're on video, you will see that I actually have a Starbucks cup, far from my first sip there. I got back from Mile High Con last night, and we returned the rental car this morning, so it's been a busy morning so far. Hope you're all doing well. If you're on video, you will see. Let's see. I'm gonna lower the screen a little bit. I'm wearing my vote shirt. It says we are not going back like ever. It's Kamala Harris, and it's really cool. It's green and it's got flowers, and the vote says the V is books, and the O is the civil rights power fist, and the T is the uterus and ovaries, and the E is rainbow. So I'm hoping to enshrine this T-shirt when Harris and Walz win the election next week, and hopefully we turn over a lot of those House and Senate seats as well. I'm not going to talk anymore about politics because we've all had enough. We have enough. Someone pointed out, I'm sorry, I always say I'm not going to talk about it, and then I do. Someone pointed out that this is our third Trump election. This is our third election enduring Donald Trump and his awful rhetoric. And like the whole Madison Square Garden rally last night, where they're just leaning hard into the racist stuff, because I think that's all they've got left in the quiver, and they're hoping to win on that. And I'm hoping they'll lose on that. So that's all I'll say about it. It's 2 more podcasts before the election is done with, and then no doubt we will have all the election denying nonsense. But at some point we could go on with our lives. Wouldn't that be nice? So it was a good weekend. I'm glad I went to the con. I had a good time hanging out with some of my friends. It's not my favorite con in the world. But I don't want to complain about it either, so I won't do that. There we are then. So now I'm getting back into finishing A Rose in the Mirror. I have got about 18,000 words to go on this draft, and then I will start revising. I'm hoping to have it all revised before Thanksgiving. Can I do it? Maybe. That's the plan anyway. This has been an interesting book to write. I know that I always have some kind of thing that I complain about on each book, because each one's its own challenge, each one's different. This one, it's interesting for me to write a book where I know I'm going to be doing a lot of revising. It's a typically I don't revise a lot. Sorry, there should not have been a pause there. I always revise. There are many people who will say, when they find out that I am an intuitive writer, a pantser, as they say, which longtime listeners, I don't like that term, but writing for discovery, I do not pre-plot, I do not outline ahead of time. And inevitably, somebody will say, but then you spend a lot of time revising. Because I do think it makes me a faster drafter to work that way, which annoys people, because there are a lot of people wedded to the idea that outlining ahead of time is the silver bullet. It's the magic formula. If you do that, then, I don't know, you're a real writer. Everything from saying that you are only a real writer if you work that way to, it's it's the holy way to be. It's the truly virtuous path, or that it is simply the most efficient. And I obviously don't agree with any of that. Longtime listeners will have heard me expound on that extensively. Um, I need more caffeine. I'm a little tired from the driving and stuff. So the thing is no, there's this idea that if you don't outline ahead of time, that you'll wander and wander, and the story will go all over the place, and then you have to spend months revising. And no, that's not true for me. I usually spend a couple of weeks revising. I can a major revision for me, which is like that first pass after drafting. I have a note here. I revise at an average of about 32 pages a day, which means that, for a 300-page book, I can get that done in, well, 10 days, right? 10 working days, a little bit more. In this case, on this book, I don't know if it's as much of an exception as I'm thinking, but it's interesting for me to write it and know for sure that there are things that I'm going to go back and fix. It'll be interesting to see if it takes me any longer than my usual average of 32 pages a day. I don't think it will, but you can all sit on the edge of your seats and anticipate whether or not that is the case. But I'm home from now until Thanksgiving. We are traveling the week of Thanksgiving, but I'm hopeful that I can get this draft pounded out. That's what she said, and revised. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking towards. Um, I have a number of notes of things that I was thinking about to talk about like a week ago. And one problem with me leaving notes for myself like that is by the time I get around to them, I'm no longer so fired up necessarily to discuss the topic. But there are several things that I wanted to touch on. One is my follow up to the author that I was complaining about, which you probably are sick of hearing me complain about. But um, a follow-up to that is, to recap for those who don't know, a very well-known author who is considered to be one of the groundbreakers in my genre and one of my personal heroes, a great influence on me, posted that she said not to throw shade, well, maybe a little, which means she knew she was throwing shade, and said that uh, would that basically that her books are better than, I don't know. It was unclear if she only meant some romantasy books or all romantasy books, but it was it was not great. She basically said that if you've been raised on a diet of junk food, of the amuse bouche, then a real literary feast is not something that you're able to comprehend or appreciate. So yeah, casting all of these books into probably an entire subgenre into the category of junk food, and it was definitely a slam against romance. And so I've already talked about this for 2 podcasts, so I'm not going to delve into that whole thing. But she followed up with a TikTok, and it's a fairly well done TikTok where they actually show a screenshot of her original post. And she's like, some people were offended that I said this. Okay, so people, I'm reasonably tech savvy. I mean, here I am on YouTube. I'm not the queen of TikTok by any stretch. I'm probably not even the pawn of TikTok. But anyway, somebody's helping her do this. This was enough tech that she didn't figure this out on her own, especially when she clearly doesn't know other things. So somebody's helping her, which is great. Perfect. Wonderful. Um, whoever is helping her needs to be giving her social media advice, because this TikTok landed like a lead balloon, because she started gaslighting. I mean, that's what it was. She said that people were saying that she shouldn't be proud of her work and that we were somehow supporting the patriarchy by doing this, that we expected female authors to be humble and that she's proud of her work and she's not. She started out saying that she finally understood the concept of the non-apology. So not only did she not apologize, she doubled down, and it was I was very upset about it. I won't lie. I was unreasonably upset about it, and it took me a little time to figure out why that was something that made me feel hurt. And it was only later when somebody else was talking about it and saying that how she had failed to acknowledge the fact that her words had caused harm, that they had hurt people, um, that this wasn't about her being proud of her work. This is about her punching down at other books. And I realized, oh well, I don't usually think, I usually think of myself as someone protecting other people from harm. And I thought, oh, I was one of those people who was hurt by this. I was hurt. Surprisingly so. So I'm still emotional about it. And I've been trying to sort out why was I so hurt by this. And I was thinking about how, especially earlier in my career, before Romantasy gained whatever level of respect we now have, which is arguably not high. But, all the times that I've been sneered at as a romance writer, that I've been told, oh, well, that you don't write fantasy, you write romance because romance is antimatter. All the times when I have not been given as, I don't know, treated like a serious author. And being on panels at conventions any number of times with authors. And I'll tell you what, folks, the people who are meanest to me, who, the only times I recall other panelists or other con attendees being mean to me, it was older women in the genre. And it's this, and I realize that, like, this particular author, even though she's only 2 years older than I am, we're probably on opposite sides of the generation gap. That she's firmly a boomer and I'm firmly Gen X. And it's difficult to draw those lines on specific dates, but I think that there's an attitude. And baby boomer women were raised to be very competitive with other women in a way that Gen X women were not. And it sucks, but I would be on panels with these older women who were fantasy writers, many of whom I grew up reading and admired tremendously, and they would treat me like dog shit for writing romance. They would, yeah, and they would say things about how, like, they didn't want to write romance, that they were serious fantasy writers, because obviously the two things are incompatible. The men can put as much sex and romance in their books as they want, but women, you gotta not put that in there if you want to be taken seriously, right? That was their attitude. I want to caveat that I do not believe that. Taken seriously, it's like, who are you trying to impress, right? So yeah, there were several times that older female authors would say things to me like that, and they would say how they stood firm, they didn't sell out and include romance. And a lot of them would fight against having their books classified as romance because for them that was a degradation of their work. So, like, Diana Gabaldon with the Outlander books has been very, very vocal about how her books are not romances, even though they took advantage of the fact that it is an epic romance in that series. Jacqueline Carey, I guess I blurted the name. I'm just mentioning her as an aside. I won't use more examples. Anyway, yeah, and these authors were surprisingly unkind to me, visibly sneering at how I dress, and smacking me down in panels, stopping me from talking, saying sneering things about romance and how they had not sold out, and I realized they had to fight, and I have a lot of sympathy for the fight that they struggled through, and I'm sure it was very difficult for them. But you don't then step on the younger women coming up in your genre, right? So it was funny because I had spent a lot of time thinking about this last week, trying to sort out why did I feel so hurt by these posts, and realizing that it felt the same way as like being on these panels, like that she thinks she is writing a feast, and yes, her books are a feast, and that my books are the amuse bouche, and it brought back all of those feelings of being treated as less than, as frivolous, and I'm clearly still a little upset about it. And it's funny because there's another author who I will successfully not name, um, who was very unkind to me on a panel. Like the first time she met me, like visibly sneered at me, and she moderated a panel I was on and would not let me talk. I mean, she would stop me. She would say, "Well, that's enough of that." And she was markedly unkind, probably the most of anyone. And I was at a con with her a couple of times. And it was funny because I saw her this weekend at this con. Um, I was walking past the table, and Connie Willis was sitting there. And Connie, who is the opposite of this, Connie Willis, who is a SIFWA Grandmaster, who has won huge awards, has been celebrated for her work, and she has been unfailingly kind and supportive to me. She's incredible. I love Connie. And Connie waved me over to come sit down. So I sat down, and it turned out that this author who did not like me, I didn't realize it as I was already coming over, she was also sitting there. And Connie introduced me to the other two women at the table, one of whom we'd met before, but we hadn't seen each other like since pre-pandemic. So we were like, oh yeah. And she introduced me to this other gal, and she was like, oh, well, it's nice to meet you. And she's looking at me funny, and she's like, well, I think maybe we've met before. And I wanted to say, yeah, and you were total freaking bitch to me. I did not say that, but I was just like, oh yeah, hi. And I mean, like, this is a person who, if I encounter her under any other circumstances, she pretends like I don't exist, right? So here, Connie's invited me to sit down, and Connie's asking me questions. The other gal's asking me some questions. And I think it's just really burning the ass of this woman that I think she knows perfectly well who I am and that she does not like me. But she was being nice because she's sitting there with Connie Willis, and nobody wants to piss off Connie Willis, right? So I thought, well, that's funny. That's just funny, and whatever. Be nice to her, include her in the conversation. So then later, like a few hours later, I passed her in the hallway and looked at her, and she gave me the meanest look. She gave me this horrible look and looked away and pretended like it was like the slam and then look away. And I thought, okay. So nothing really changed. She knew who I was. And life is short. We don't need to do these things, but we do. So to wind that all up, this author that I've been upset about, that I'm going to persistently pretend I haven't named, um, I'd never met her, and now I don't want to. But, this idea that being proud of her work means I'm not being articulate now, am I? You can be proud of your work without minimizing the work of other people. Being proud of your work does not mean saying, my work is here and your work is there. And I know it is for some people. Like some people, life is a competition. Everything's a competition. You can only be a winner if there's a loser. But that's not what I believe. And I think longtime listeners know that. And it's probably one of my core credos, that I think competition is nonsense. We are not here to compete with each other. We are here to support and celebrate one another. And yeah, People who aren't into that, I just don't have time for them. So, on that note, I am going to get busy writing this book, and I will see you all in November. Talk to you all on Friday. You all take care, okay? Bye-bye.